Hey everybody, and welcome to Conclave Connected 2020. I hope you guys are having a great day today. We have a lot of fun programs set today, and I have the pleasure of serving as your 2019 through 2020 section vice chief, and I've had the pleasure to serve as the Conclave Connected lead and plan out all the program today. We have an excellent set of trainers today, and we also have a Q&A with the national officers and the newly elected section chief after lunch. And we'll also have a compilation of all the Conclave videos. So right now we have our first session up, which is going to be Building an Effective Social Media Program with Ethan Seister, and he is the NOAC 2020 Communications Conference Vice Chief and the SR7B Section Chief. So Ethan, I'm going to give it up to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Like Tyler said, my name is Ethan Seister, and I will be leading this first session on building an effective social media program. And as Tyler said, I serve as the section chief for SR7B, which is out here in North Carolina. I'm from Winston, North Carolina. And I also serve as the NOAC 2020 Communications Conference Vice Chief. So if you're interested in going to NOAC, either on communication staff or on another staff, I'd be happy to get you set up with that. So please reach out to me after this presentation if you're interested in doing that. We're definitely still recruiting a lot of staff there. And then if you're interested in going as a delegate, I'd encourage you to talk to your lodge advisor or lodge chief and figure out how you can go with your contingent. So getting started here this morning, obviously this session is not as interactive as I'd like it to be. I'd much rather be able to be in a room with you all and interact and answer questions that way. But given the circumstances, we're doing the best we can. So I have the Facebook Live and the YouTube stream pulled up here on my other monitor. So if you have any questions or would like to interact with the presentation, feel free to do so there. And I will answer questions periodically and kind of check that throughout the presentation to hopefully incorporate some feedback there. So please be as interactive as you can in the comments, and I'd appreciate that. A little bit about what we'll be talking about today. We're really trying to expand your knowledge of social media, but also challenge you to think differently about how you can use social media, both for your lodge and elsewhere. So we'll be discussing our audience and what kind of purposes we're trying to achieve in reaching them. And then with that, using the right audience and the right purpose to choose our channel for social media. So there's a lot of different social media channels out there that we could use. So choosing the right channel based off of our audience and purpose. And then we'll be talking about creating engaging content. So different best practices that we can use to make our content more engaging, along with managing social media, so setting up your team to implement your social media program and things like that. And then finally, I will be challenging you all to think differently about social media with a short challenge you can do after the presentation and then submit online, which we'll talk about a bit later. But like I said, today we'll be expanding your knowledge of social media, challenging you to think differently, and going through those kinds of things. But social media is a real force, so I'd like to start off with talking about that. Everyone here has access to social media. It's something we're all familiar with, whether you're using your own account right now or a family member's or something like that. You have access to social media today just to view this presentation. So it's really something that's prevalent. We use it to connect with family, friends, our favorite brands, companies, things like that. But social media is essentially like any other form of communication in that it's just a sender, a message, and a receiver. So we usually think of the sender as like the user, the poster, and it gets a little more complicated with social media, obviously, because we have two-way communication at sometimes. But we have the sender, the message, which is like the post or the comment, and then finally the receiver, who would be the consumer of social media. But social media also offers several unique benefits for an organization like the Word of the Arrow in connecting with our members. And the first big one is that it's where our members are. So a large portion of our membership is already using social media, and that's really convenient because with all the different things competing for attention nowadays, we can't really expect our members to necessarily reach out for us for information. We have to kind of meet them where they are, and they're already using social media, so it's really convenient for us to connect with them there. So what we see is that social media use is only increasing nowadays, even among older people. So there's often this perception that social media is something for younger generations, or that it's increasingly prevalent for youth and teens and young adults, but not necessarily for older adults. And what we're seeing is that that's not true. So while youth and adults are using different platforms and different purposes, they're all using social media at higher rates. So it's become one of the primary ways that we can connect with our membership and share information, both as an organization and as society in general. But secondly, the prevalence of social media across a wide variety of devices means that our members can engage with our content at any time and in any place. So it's really convenient for our followers on social media because they're able to engage with our content when and where they choose to do so, as well as the fact that they can subscribe or follow relevant accounts to have information pushed to them. And then they can also use search and hashtag features to search out new content. For posters of social media, it's really convenient because we're able to create content instantaneously and post time of the day without having to worry about finding the right time of the evening for a phone call or something like that. And we also don't really have to worry about delays in communication because we can post instantaneously. So back when the OA was first doing communications and sending out printed news, different variables there, but with social media we can post at any time of the day and our content will be there whenever our followers choose to receive it. So it's really convenient in that respect as well. And lastly, the last unique benefit we see is that we can interact with individuals on a personal level. So with a lot of other forms of communication, it's really hard to interact with a member one-on-one, especially when you have a large lodge. If you have 500,000 members, you're not able to really interact with an individual. But social media allows us to really personally connect with someone because we can receive real-time feedback. So we're able to honestly engage with an individual and hopefully improve not only their communications experience, but their overall experience in the Order of the Arrow as well. So these are some unique benefits that we see as to why an organization like the Order of the Arrow, or specifically an Order of the Arrow Lodge, would want to use social media. So we also have to talk about understanding our audience. So as with any form of communication, we want to begin by understanding our audience and their needs. So we'll be talking a little bit about different audiences that we see in the Order of the Arrow for an Order of the Arrow Lodge, and kind of what purposes they would achieve and what we would need to do in reaching them. So in defining who our audience is, I'm going to go over some of the main audiences that I see for an Order of the Arrow Lodge, as well as different subgroups within those audiences. And then if you have any other audiences that you'd like to talk about, we can, if you drop those in the comments on either the Facebook Live or the YouTube stream, I can kind of incorporate them here as well. But I guess the first main audience that I see for an Order of the Arrow Lodge is new candidates. So these are people who have been elected to the Order of the Arrow but have not yet completed their induction. So obviously you're going to have specific messages to these individuals in that group about getting to their induction and finishing that process. The second main audience, and perhaps the biggest one, is lodge members. And with lodge members we have a lot of different subgroups because the lodge is a very heterogeneous mixture of a lot of different people. So we have brotherhood candidates. So these would be individuals who have become eligible to complete their brotherhood but have not yet done so. So again, with the new candidates, we have a lot of information that we'd want to reach specifically to them. And then different members of different committees. So maybe your lodge's social committee or your service committee would have their own particular way of communicating on social media. And then each individual chapter would be a separate subgroup. So maybe you have a communication that's just specific to one chapter, or maybe a couple different chapters but not the whole lodge. And then finally, we would have attendees to an event. So if you think about NOAC or Conclave, you really want to be able to connect with those individuals in real time at the event, or share information relevant just to that event. And in order to do so, we could create a subgroup on social media for them. But our next audience that I see would be important audience because our core target audience for a lodge is usually youth who are around 11 to 17 years of age, and that group is really influenced by what their parents are allowing them to do. And so we have to rely on parents to kind of support them in the OA, and we need them to drive them to events and things like that. So by reaching a parental audience on our social media programs, we'll be able to connect with that group too and ensure that our lodge members have the support they need to get to and from lodge events and things like that, and parents are kind of informed of what's going on as well. And along that line, we also want to communicate with an audience of unit leaders. So this would be like scoutmasters for troops or advisors for crews, and give them information about the Order of the Arrow and things like that over social media. So that's one specific audience that I would see as far as a larger social media program as well. And then we also have district and council leaders, as well as professional staff within your council. So all of those individuals who work at the council office and things like that, that would be another audience we're trying to reach. And then lodge alumni. So these are individuals who are no longer directly involved with your lodge, but these individuals were still connected as far as reaching out to the lodge and things like that. And then finally, we have community members. So as a service organization, we're frequently working with other community organizations to complete service projects or otherwise, be involved in our communities. And so that's one audience we need to communicate with over social media. But if you have any other ideas that you'd like to include as far as audiences, you can include those in the comments, and I'll try and revisit them as we're going through this presentation. But all of these audiences have different relationships with the lodge, different levels of understanding, different questions they might have, and therefore they're going to have different desires for engagement over social media. And general purposes when we're communicating with all of these different audiences. So we're either going to be educating, inspiring, or entertaining. And with education, we often have a need for a one-way dissemination of information. So the example that I think of here is if you're trying to communicate information about an upcoming lodge event, maybe you're announcing the event, promoting the event, or otherwise sharing information, you might just be able to put out a post and include that information there, and you'll have that one-way communication. But other times we have the need for more of a conversation over social media, and that typically takes place with multiple people commenting publicly. But either way, social media allows us to share information widely and quickly, helping to educate our members. And then our second general purpose would be to inspire our members. So as a membership organization that's values-based, we can utilize social media to rededicate ourselves to the obligation and admonition on a daily basis. So a thoughtful story or question or quote or an image like that can be used as a daily reminder of what was learned during ceremonies between in-person and lodge events. So it's really helpful to kind of revisit those values on a daily basis through our social media posts. And by asking questions or soliciting examples of an individual's experience with the Order's principles in daily life, we can utilize social media to rededicate ourselves to the Order's principles every day. And along with that, we can better help people live the obligation daily through a constant reminder of our obligation and admonition, as well as our Order's values, and then also through regular exploration of how to apply these values in daily life. So really utilizing inspiring posts to not only remind our members of our values, but explore how they can be applied outside of the Order of the Arrow in our daily interactions and things like that. And finally, we have to entertain. So entertainment is kind of a nice way of making sure that education and inspiration aren't necessarily dry or boring. Definitely take on a more friendly and familiar tone in our social media posts than we often can in other forms of communication. So along with that, we can even include some humor or wit in our posts, but we just have to be really careful that our posts are not misconstrued or taken as offensive or sarcastic or anything like that. So Scout-like humor and wit are really powerful tools for making our message memorable and engaging. But again, it's very important that when we're engaging with our members in a humorous way, we're really careful to follow the Scout Oath and the Scout Law and make sure that our posts are not being misconstrued or taken offensively or anything like that. So along with that, by educating, inspiring, and entertaining our members, we can ensure that we are helping remind them of our Order's daily principles in their everyday life, as well as achieving our lodge's purposes on social media. But in doing so, we're going to be able to change the thoughts and actions of all of our followers on social media. But those specific thoughts and actions that we inspire over social media will differ depending on who the audience member is. So it's really important that we understand our audience and our purpose every time we are utilizing social media, and definitely when we're trying to build an effective social media program. So along with that, we're going to move on to talking about using the right channel for the right audience and the right purpose. So we've talked a little bit about who our audiences are and what we're trying to do when we're reaching them over social media. So those are our audiences and our purpose. But there's obviously lots of different audiences and lots of different purposes. So you have to look at which audience you're trying to reach and which purpose you're trying to achieve when you're selecting your social media channel. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different social media opportunities out there. So even the largest lodges would struggle if they tried to utilize all these social media channels well. So rather than doing that, lodge leaders should focus their efforts on a small number of social media channels and ensure that they're doing a good job on those social media channels rather than doing a poor job of maintaining a large number of social media channels. In selecting these channels, lodges should think about what their members are using and what channels would be best suited for achieving their desired purpose. So each channel will have basic demographic trends and feature sets that may suggest it as being better for a specific audience or specific purpose. But social media is very dynamic, and leaders need to be aware of constantly shifting trends in order to ensure that their social media channel is still achieving their desired purpose and reaching their desired audience. So the lodge should develop a unified brand across all of their different social media channels. So if we're using all these different social media channels, we want to make sure that we have a consistent look and image across them. So consistent use of avatar images, cover and banner photos, as well as channel and handle names will make it not only easier for your lodge to post on these channels and integrate your content that way, but also easier for your followers to find your content across different channels and things like that. And the lodge may want to sign up for an account on new or emerging social media channels, even if you're not sure if or how you will use them in the future. So the thinking there is that this will prevent someone else from squatting in your desired name if you'd want to use it in the future. And you can always post initial content on these channels that you're using less often, just to direct your followers to the channels that you are more active on. So obviously, learning the nuances of each channel and recruiting and retaining followers is something that'll take a lot of time and an effort. So every time you're analyzing whether or not to utilize a new channel, you have to make a serious return on investment decision as far as if the time and effort you're going to put into that channel and making it relevant and learning all the nuances is going to be worth reaching your audience there. But you should honestly evaluate all of the different channels out there. So faddish specialty channels may have short-term or project-specific uses, but again, it's really important to think about evaluating the costs and benefits of your decision as to whether or not that channel is going to reach enough people and achieve enough of your purpose to warrant using that channel. So it's a significant return on investment decision that must be made regarding each new channel. But lodges should, keeping in mind the different social media networks out there, choose one or more of the following networks to integrate into their social media program and keep in mind who their audience is, what they're trying to do in reaching them, and things like that. So the first major social media channel that we'll be talking about is Slack, which is a set of team collaboration tools that spans all different operating systems. So one of the great things about Slack is you can use it on your desktop, your laptop, your mobile device. So it's really convenient for groups that way. And it has millions of daily users across business, not-for-profits, personal groups. It's really flexible and can be used by a lot of different groups and things like that. And it integrates with hundreds of other social media tools, making it a hub for team communication and collaboration. And it's really great for sharing information and data as far as a team goes. So Slack is really great for team collaboration and things like that. But next we'll be talking about Facebook, which is the largest social media channel. It has over 2.2 billion active users. So with that many people, it's very likely that those in your scouting and Order VR communities are already active on social media with Facebook. And like we talked about earlier, it's really important to meet our members where they are. And frankly, they're on Facebook, so it's a great place to interact with our members where they're already utilizing content and things like that. And it's good for posting short-form content, links to external articles, as well as photos and videos. And it also includes threaded commenting. So Facebook is really diverse in what it allows you to do on social media, and therefore it can be used to reach a diverse array of audiences and a diverse array of purposes as well. And Facebook has more daily teen users than any other channel, so it's really important to connect with our teen audience there as well. And Google Plus is really similar to Facebook in terms of features and capabilities, but it's a much smaller network with only 333 million active users. But along with that, Google Plus likes and content are weighted heavily in Google search engine results. So this can be an important consideration in choosing to use Google Plus as part of your public-facing community content, especially coinciding with your website. So a lot of times if you have a Google Plus account, you'll be more likely to appear in Google search engine results. So if you're trying to boost your largest website audience and things like that, Google Plus is a good way to do that. And if you use a social media management tool, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to post both the Facebook and Google Plus at the same time, it'll make managing your Google Plus page a little easier. But you still have to monitor comments and respond to messages on Google Plus as well, so that's an important decision to make. And we'll talk a little bit later about managing comments and things like that. But next, Twitter is great because users can post 280-character microblogs, so it's really great for sharing breaking news, in-the-moment messages, things like that. And we have growing usage among teens and young adults on Twitter, but this is one of those instances where we do see an age gap as far as social media usage. So there's a lot of younger people on Twitter, but it's not as popular among older adults. And it's great, like I said, for sharing quick updates, timely reminders, topical content, really just getting your message out there quickly, and a short message too. So it's considered to be the pulse of the internet in that it's what's happening right now. So if you want to share something quickly, a fast breaking news update, Twitter's usually the place to do that. But the other end of the spectrum as far as age goes is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is popular among professionals and college students. And it's a great way to connect with people who are no longer directly involved with the lodge. So we see network resource sharing and establishing ties with a lot of lodge alumni and people who are no longer directly involved with the lodge. But like I said, it skews towards older adults and well-educated users. We're seeing the average age on LinkedIn between 30 and 49 years of age. So it's important to use Twitter to reach younger audiences and LinkedIn to reach maybe older professional audiences who may not directly be involved with the lodge anymore. But it has limited availability to share visual media, so it's important to keep that in mind when using LinkedIn. So with LinkedIn, you can share relevant links and articles that way, but it's really not that useful as far as visual media. But what is good for visual media would be YouTube, and YouTube's the world's second largest search engine. So second to Google, you can post a lot of content there, and people will see it, and it reaches a lot of people. It has 1 billion active users each month, and 300 hours of videos are shared every minute. So there's a lot of content, a lot of people on YouTube. It's a very big site, and it reaches more teens and young adults than any single cable channel, and is rated by millennials as the top place to watch content. So all this just goes to show how prevalent YouTube is, and how many people it's reaching on a regular basis. So it's really important to consider the audience you're reaching when you're selecting your social media channel, and YouTube's really good for that return on investment decision. But the thing about video content is it's a lot harder to create than written or photographic content, so there's a lot more effort and time that goes into creating good video content, but it's much more effective and will be more engaging for creating branding or promotional content, as well as like how-to or instructional content. So again, you have to consider the time and effort you're putting into it, but if you can create good photo or good videographic content, it'll be much more effective in promoting an event or teaching someone how to sign up for something online or any other instructional content like that. Along with the visual media side of things, we have Instagram, which is great for photo sharing. Instagram's primarily for mobile devices. You can view pictures from a computer, but you can't post from a computer. So we're usually reaching our audience on a mobile device when using Instagram. That's an important consideration. But it has 800 million active users and 16 billion photos shared, and 53% of young adults use Instagram. So it's another really popular network as far as reaching young people, but there's growing usage among older adults too on Instagram, and it has edged out Facebook and Twitter among teens as the most important network. But it's also really easy to integrate into Facebook and Twitter, so you can utilize Instagram to utilize social media management tool to post on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the same time, and your content will integrate really easily across those three channels. But lastly, Snapchat is really similar to Twitter for those in-the-moment breaking news kinds of messages, but you use typically a photo or a short video as the main message, and then brief captions and annotations to kind of complement that message rather than a text-based post like on Twitter. But with 150 million active users, Twitter Snapchat has become one of the main methods of reaching teens on social media. But what's important to consider about Snapchat is that messages disappear once viewed. So once you send something on Snapchat, it's usually only there for 24 hours if it's on your story, or if you send it to someone specifically, like, it disappears immediately. And you can only send to a defined contact list. So typically on Snapchat, people who are seeing your page are only people who follow you. I guess the Discover and Explore page is making that kind of less true nowadays, but typically with Snapchat, you're only sending to a defined contact list, so you're really limiting your audience by using Snapchat. But it can be beneficial, like Twitter, for those in-the-moment messages, items like that when selecting your social media channel, your overall communications and social media strategy. But it's really important to take into consideration which platforms your audience are using. So what I would suggest thinking about is which channels you're active on your own social media. So where do you see yourself and your friends utilizing social media, and then as well as what other organizations are using to reach you. So what is effective for other groups you're involved with, as well as comparing with other lodges in your section and things like that about what's working for them. But those are some of the social media channels that I would consider using for a lodge, and you may choose to integrate one or more of them. So it's important to think about, it's not just like Facebook or Twitter. You can definitely use both. But like we talked about, there's a return on investment decision that has to be made about managing all these different social media channels. So definitely think about that, consider that, and just take that into account when you're making those decisions. So now that we've kind of talked about who our audience is, what purpose we're trying to reach, and then how we can utilize different social media channels to reach that audience and that purpose, we're going to talk about what kind of content we'd like to post on our social media accounts. So the best social media posts are those that engage the consumer. We want to inspire them to think and act differently and somehow engage with our post. So whether that's sharing the post, commenting, reacting, even just liking it or something like that, we want to inspire some sort of action on behalf of our consumer. But obviously not every social media post inspires action. So we're going to be talking about what kind of social media posts are best for creating engaging content. And while some of these methods for creating engaging content may seem relatively obvious, it's really important to review them and integrate them in our social media strategy, so that way we make sure that we're making our content as engaging as possible. So the first best practice for creating engaging content is emoticons. So emoticons increase comments by 33%. So the reason that is that emoticons will make your communication seem more friendly and informal, which is really one of the main things we're trying to achieve on social media. So like we talked about earlier, we can take on a much more friendly and informal tone over social media than we can in other forms of communication. So it's really beneficial to be able to utilize emoticons in that way. And when we're doing this, we're making the conversation friendly and informal, which inspires conversation back from our consumers as well. But it's important to use emoticons judiciously, because a little goes a long way, and they can often drown out your message if you're using too many emoticons. So use them carefully and make sure that they're really complementing your message in an effective way. Similarly, question posts get 100% more comments. So again, it's about conversation, and our brains are naturally wired to want to answer questions. So if you ask a question post, you'll be much likely to hear a response from the consumer that way. But the thing is that people may be more likely to share from behind the buffer of a screen. So you'll often hear from people over social media that you would not hear from in person, because they don't have maybe the social anxiety factor, or the intimidation of having to answer your question in front of a large group. But the buffer of a screen would make them more likely to share. So you may hear from people that may not be as likely to share feedback and comments and things like that in person. So that's one of the major benefits of social media, and also a way to make sure that we're engaging our audience is to ask questions. And similar to that, short posts get 23% more information on social media in small, digestible chunks. So we need to make it easier for our consumers and kind of make it convenient for them by making sure that we get to the point over social media and make sure our posts are short and manageable for the consumer to read. And we should also, along with that, answer the what's in it for me question that consumers are subconsciously asking. So we need to answer the question of how this information is relevant to them and what they're going to do with it. So making your content seem purposeful and engaging for the consumer will make them much more likely to engage with that content and utilize it as well. Along with that, we always want to be using photos and videos as much as possible. So there's a saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and a video, even more than that. So along with photos and videos, you want to use helpful infographics, well done illustrations, or even a creative or funny meme, and that'll add more engaging interaction to your message. So it'll make it more engaging for the consumer to see photos and videos, and they'll be more likely to interact with your post that way. And to go along with that, Facebook and video posts get 39% more interaction than posts without, and tweets on Twitter are shared 2 times more often than tweets without. Creating our own engaging content, we want to share good external content as well. It will add validity to our message and kind of show that other people outside of our organization are talking about our message too. So it's really important to get permission and give attribution when appropriate when you're sharing external content. And it's also good to follow the rule of thirds, which many organizations find helpful in creating social media content. And the way that the rule of thirds works is they kind of divide up all of your social media interactions into 3 different parts. So the first third will be content that is about us. So things that are self-serving to our organization and kind of achieve our own goals and messages. So the example here for the Order of the Arrow would be like the post I talked about earlier with education about sharing information about an upcoming lodge event or a policy change or something like that. So the first third of your content needs to be during your events, sharing information about policy changes, anything that's self-serving to the message of your lodge. And the second third will be sharing reputable information and ideas from what we call thought leaders. So thought leaders are individuals who are relevant to our organization's message, activities, and cause, but not directly connected to our group. So the example here for the Order of the Arrow would be sharing content from leaders or other people external to our organization, as well as news stories. So this could be a quote, from like a political or historical leader on your social media page relevant to the message of your service or something like that. Or a news story or service outside of our organization that's still relevant to our message and things like that. And in terms of a lodge social media page, sharing like a post from, the national chief would be considered a thought leader because he's not directly connected to your lodge. But really the nuances there of like who's technically connected doesn't really matter. It's just that you're sharing inspirational content that adds validity to your program from outside your organization directly. And then finally, we want our final third to be personal interactions that build the brand. So the example for the OA would be asking questions on social media about an individual's Order of the Year experience that cause them to reflect on cheerful service. So we have the kind of 3 different thirds of social media we're trying to achieve, and along with that, we're sharing external content. And our first third we talked about was messages self-serving to our organization. So these are the posts that you probably typically think about when you're going to create a social media program. You want to post about your upcoming lodge event. You want to announce that the bylaws have changed or that something's changed, and you want to get that information out to your consumers quickly. And that would be the first third, are things that are really self-serving to our message. And then our second third, we want to share good external content to add validity to our messages, and this often achieves our purpose of inspiring our members. So quotes, stories, things like that we can share from other accounts that are relevant to our organization. And then our final third are personal interactions to build the brand. So these personal interactions can take place in the form of a post asking a question, so being able to interact personally with our consumers on social media and make sure that we're having those conversations will be really helpful in creating engaging content. But along with that, we want to be reasonably provocative. So a bold statement or headline, as well as a thoughtful question, will spark conversation on behalf of the consumer. So if you share something interesting or ask a thoughtful question, you're likely to get more responses than if you make, a relatively boring post. But the important thing here is to remember that we're trying to be provocative and not controversial. So remember that our goal is to inspire conversation rather than arguments or hurt feelings or anything like that. So it's really important to follow the Scout Oath and the Scout Law when you're making content that's meant to provoke a response on behalf of the consumer. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, it's really important to be innovative. So social media is very dynamic and it's constantly changing. So anyone who claims to be an expert in social media is already working with outdated information. It's a playground for testing and learning, and it's really great because if you come up with a novel idea about how to, reach a desired audience or achieve, social media really favors the bold, the innovative, and I would encourage you all to be as innovative as possible and think out our social media challenge. I really would challenge you all to think innovatively about social media content And especially right now with the whole coronavirus situation, with everyone less able to interact in person, social media has taken on really a new redefined purpose in Read Scout Oath and Scout Law. So along with that, we're going to talk finally about managing social media. So far we've discussed our different audiences and our different purposes we want to post on those channels to engage our consumers. But finally, we need to talk about managing social media. So we'll be going over how to implement an effective social media team to manage your social media, responding to comments, setting up a social media account with security, and making sure that our accounts are secure, and really how your social media team will fit into your lodge's organizational structure. So this is a really important section for anyone who's leading their lodge's social media team or otherwise engaging in producing a social media program for your lodge. But with that, we're going to start off with some relatively dry content talking about the Boy Scouts of America's guidelines for youth protection and social media. And while this may seem boring, it's really important to incorporate these guidelines when you are leading your lodge's social media program. So if you're a youth leader and you're in charge of social media, you want to be aware of these, but especially as an adult leader responsible for, or an adult volunteer responsible for leading our social media program, you want to make sure that we're incorporating these things into our lodge's social media programs. So the first and perhaps most obvious is to review and adhere to the existing terms of service and guidelines on all the different social media platforms you're using. So when you went to sign up for Facebook or YouTube to view today's live stream, you probably had to click, I agree to the terms of service, or I've read to and agree to the terms of service. And I'm willing to bet that none of you actually read them because people don't actually do that right in everyday life. But it's really important to be aware of these terms of service and guidelines if you're going to be representing an organization like Order of the Arrow on social media. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you're going to be posting content on behalf of the OA or on behalf of your lodge, at least review those terms of service and guidelines and make sure you're following them in the content you're posting on those accounts. And along with that, in order to ensure that all communication is safe and positive on social media, all communication on social media and all channels must be public. So no private channels are acceptable in administering the scouting program. And often people will say, well, the information that I want to share on social media shouldn't be shared in public. And if the information you want to share on social media should not be shared in public, then you should choose another avenue to share it other than social media. So our communications on social media within the context of the Boy Scouts should be the adults. So just make sure you're using public channels on social media. I think the biggest issue we see here would be like private Facebook groups or a closed Facebook group. All Facebook groups within the Boy Scouts are supposed to be public, so make sure you're incorporating that into your social media program. And then 2 Deep leadership as it applies to social media. This means there should be no private messages or one-on-one contact between youth and adults over social media. So all Instagram DMs, Facebook messages, Twitter DMs, emails need to take place between either two youth or 2 adults and 1 youth. So you need to copy 1 or more adults openly on the message at a bare minimum. But really all communication between youth and adults on social media should be taking place in a public forum. But again, at a bare minimum, including 1 or more adults openly copied on those messages. And then kind of along with that, we want to keep our personal information private on social media. So when you're setting up accounts to interact with the Order of the Arrow and the Boy Scouts on social media, you want to keep all of your personal information private. So this would include like your phone number, your email address, or your physical address at home. You don't want to share that information publicly on social media. Really keep that information and as much information as you can private when creating these public-facing social media accounts. So if you have any questions on the guidelines for youth protection, make sure you get those clarified before you begin interacting on social media, especially representing the Order of the Arrow. But I'd be happy to answer any of those in the comments as we move forward, or encourage you to check out the guidelines yourself. But just make sure you review these and are familiar with them if you're going to be leading your lodge's social media program. So now that we've talked about that, we're going to be talking about creating an effective social media team. So successful implementation of your lodge's social media program will require the right sort of team. And we want just enough hierarchy to maintain our lodge's message and brand and image and things like that. But we also want to allow our social media team with enough boundaries or enough area within those boundaries to be innovative. So like I said, innovation is really important on social media. And by allowing our team some leeway within these boundaries, they'll be encouraged to think outside of the box and be innovative in that respect. So based on your lodge's organizational chart, you should determine where social media fits. And you should keep in mind that social media works best as part of your integrated communication strategy. So if you think about all the different communications, we want all of that to integrate with your social media program, and therefore all these teams need to be working together on achieving your lodge's desired message. And along with that, you should sit down and have these groups create an editorial calendar. So that's just a fancy word for saying sit down and look at when you're going to post what. So you want to have your time-bound activities already figured out. So this would include pre-event promotions, holiday messages, or maybe any theme days you want to do. So if you have like a Throwback Thursday every week, or maybe something for Taco Tuesday for your lodge's favorite tacos, something you can integrate more relevant, timely, and topical content kind of in and around those posts. So with your editorial calendar, that would integrate all of your lodge's communication messages and then ensure that you can create more relevant and timely content in and around that. And you want to have your youth lead and adult advisor appointed for social media to kind of lead this team. And those individuals need to really get it when it comes to social media. They should be strong interpersonal communicators who are active in social media themselves, and therefore they can lead your team in creating social media posts for your lodge. And not only do they need to be committed to regularly posting content and monitoring your desired channels, but social media is very innovative, dynamic, ever-changing. So these individuals need to commit to ongoing learning and make sure that they're reviewing those best practices and able to connect with their members as those things are changing and stay relevant and timely. And your lodge leadership needs to be willing to delegate a considerable amount of trust to these individuals and this team to make quick decisions without multiple layers of hierarchy or a lengthy approval process. So social media is really dynamic, and if we have this long approval process every time we want to respond to a comment or post social media, we're not going to be able to meet the needs of our consumers. So we need to make sure that our social media team has enough trust and leeway to be able to make decisions quickly. But those decisions and that trust need to be built around a certain traditional practices and things like that and how they handle these types of situations. But you want to go ahead and sort that out ahead of time so your social media team is prepared to respond to comments and post relevant topical content as quickly as they can. Your social media lead and your adult advisor handling everything on social media. Depending on the depth and breadth of your social media program, you're going to want to make sure that you have enough members to effectively implement your social media program. And you should keep in mind that these individuals might be able to be shared between your lodge's other communications methods. So we're going to talk about a couple different positions that you might want to have in your social media team. But I'm also saying that you could be able to use these individuals to, edit your newsletter or manage your website or something like that, depending on the size of your social media and your communications teams. But the first really big and important team members will be individual collaborators or individual contributors for each of your channels and managing these channels. So these individual channel managers will be able to monitor these channels, post content, and that's kind of their area of expertise. So maybe if they're in charge of the lodge's Instagram page and they are constantly checking those DMs on Instagram and making sure that all of the posts go out there, that's what we're looking for with an individual content manager for each channel, just to make sure that the content's going out and that we're responding to content and comments as quickly as we can. But along with those individuals, we want content contributors and authors who are going to write and source content. So someone has to create all of the posts that are going out. And in some lodges, you might have your channel manager and your content author be the same person. But in other lodges with a larger communications and social media team, you might be able to spread out that workflow and have engaging, because as we talked about, photo and video content is really helpful in creating engaging content. And by having these individuals who can create good visual media content, we'll be better able to reach that purpose on social media. And then finally, analysts. So they want to be able to review our social media content and figure out what's working and learn for next time as far as how we can innovate our social media programs. So those are kind of the different individuals that I see as part of a social media team. Again, it really will vary depending on the depth and breadth of your social media program, as well as the current existing structure of your communications team in the lodge. So consider those individuals, but also consider that you may need more or less depending on how you're implementing your social media program. But along with that, we want to set up our social media accounts with a considerable degree of security. So we want to set up these social media accounts with shared or generic email addresses. So whether that's, Tyler at sr9.org, or if that's tylersr9.org at gmail, something access that content when they need to. But you should change the passwords regularly or anytime there's a change in membership or leadership on the social media team in order to ensure that you have security on your account and that no one that shouldn't have access still has access to the account. And we strongly recommend the use of a social media management tool. So you may have heard of like Buffer, Hootsuite, or Sprout. Those are 3 of the main social media management tools that we'd recommend. But what they allow you to do for a social media management tool is you can post content over multiple social media channels at one time without having to necessarily post on each of those channels individually. So you can have one dashboard and then post content that integrates across all of your different social media channels. And the other benefit here is that you can schedule posts ahead of time, and you can also have multiple users have access without having to share passwords for each of those social media accounts. And the less individuals who have access to passwords on each of your individual social media accounts, the less likely you are to have a mishap with poorly placed content. So when they log in with their one password to the social media management tool, they'll be definitely posting to the lodge's account rather than their own personal account. And that really maintains a degree of security over your accounts, as well as makes it more convenient to post posts. You can gather data about your social efforts, so it'll show you, how many clicks your posts are getting, or likes, or the number of views and things like that, depending on the channel and like what it is. And when you gather this data about your social efforts, you can have a better idea of what's working and innovate your methods moving forward to make sure that you're meeting the needs of your audiences. So along with that, we just want to make sure that we're setting up with a generic email address, that everyone who needs to have passwords does have passwords, and that those individuals who don't need to have the password don't have access to the password. And really, we're just trying to make sure that we don't have mishaps with poorly placed content. So making sure that we don't have people who are on but along with that, we want to make sure that we're developing a comment policy for our lodge's social media page. So like we talked about earlier, we can really engage personally with individuals on social media. And with that honest conversation will often come critical feedback. But some comments are just simply inappropriate and don't fit within the Scout Oath and Scout Law, and therefore need to be handled in an appropriate manner on social media. And the best way to do that is ahead of time develop some sort of policy for how you're going to manage these comments. So we'll be going through the Boy Scouts America Facebook page and their comment policy. And what I would encourage you to do is review this with your lodge advisor, your social media advisor, as well as other lodge leaders, and determine whether your lodge's comment policy looks like this or is adapted from this or something entirely different. But be prepared to respond to any negative comments that don't fit within the Scout Oath and Scout Law. So the first thing that the Boy Scouts America Facebook on the Boy Scouts America Facebook page. And along with that, any off-topic comments. So specifically here, they talk about comments that are promoting unapproved products and services. And then finally, the cyber top-line reporting categories for the National Center for Missing and Exploited. Leniency both in what people can post, but also in what they consider against Scout Oath and Scout Law. So I would encourage, setting up some sort of formal comment policy. You also have to, understand that the interpretation of that will take hold at some point to make sure that you're removing appropriate or inappropriate comments. So just make sure that you've had this conversation ahead of time, so you're not caught off guard when something inappropriate comes up on your social media page, and you have to manage that then. So along with that, and I think we've discussed this a lot, but we really need to make sure that we're responding to comments quickly and messages as well. So our consumers in social media are used to timely responses, and if we have delays in our responses, that'll erode the effectiveness of our social media program. So the best way to make sure that we're responding quickly and timely review publications such as the Language of Scouting and the Order of the Arrow Brand and Identity Guide. But make sure that those who are posting your content as well as creating your content are familiar with that. and following the correct capitalization practices, style conventions, phrasing, and things like that within the Order of the Arrow and the Boy Scouts of America. So let's just make sure you're using the right vocabulary and kind of maintaining our order's message and things like that. And finally, we'd encourage your social media management team to come up with encourage their followers to use as well. So anytime that your followers are commenting on your post or sharing messages on their own social media pages, if they're using their I'm suggesting that you complete with teams of up to 4 people. I recognize that may be difficult because you're all at home in different parts of the state or different areas. Feel free to work together and collaborate on this challenge. But the challenge is to come up with a Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or otherwise achieving one of our purposes to entertain, educate, or inspire. So it could be something funny and relevant. It could be an inspirational story. It could be something informative about an upcoming meeting or event or something like that. If you are sharing educational content though, or informative content, I guess, make sure that you have the correct information before sending it in, just to make sure that you're not spreading misinformation. But I would recommend going one of the other routes personally. If you wanted to do something more educational or inspirational, I think that'd be more fun for this challenge. But you can submit your posts at sr9.org before April 24th, so that's a week from today. And again, Tyler will send out a handout after this session, and that'll have information on how to submit your post there. And then after that, the social media and communications team for SR9 will review those posts with me, and we'll select the top posts to be shared on the SR9 official social media. And what this will allow you to do is see how different content performs with our audiences on social media, and therefore interact with our audiences and see what's performing well and what's not, and then adapt to move forward. So I'd really encourage you all to be innovative with this challenge and really do your best to select posts that are going to engage the audience in new and exciting ways. But with that, that's pretty much everything I have. If we make our content relevant, timely, and high quality, we'll be able to educate, inspire, and entertain our members. But this takes a team of high quality and dedicated folks to further the message of the Lodge. But when used correctly, we can empower our social media, or we can use social media to empower airmen to better live a life of cheerful service through daily interactions with our programs and values. So I'm going to go ahead and answer a few questions here in the comments. I think I saw a couple going through here. Twitter and Snapchat, and those are kind of like the main social media networks nowadays. We talked a little bit about like Slack and a couple other social media networks that are more useful for like team collaboration, but sharing information widely to external audiences, I would recommend Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the thing about Snapchat is it's really good for breaking news. So we do like story takeovers in my section for like section officers visiting for the weekend, but it's not really that effective for reaching a wide audience as far as promotional content. So maybe entertainment's good on Snapchat, but I would tailor your message towards if you're trying to educate your members, so share information, I would use Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're keeping in mind that Facebook has your largest audience, but you might be able to reach more teens on Instagram. So using those two platforms primarily. Like this, Tyler can talk to you guys a little bit more about the specific software, but I would say the easiest way and simplest way to produce a live stream would be to use Facebook Live and YouTube, and you can do like a Zoom to stream if you have a paid Zoom account, and you can do that to produce something pretty quickly and easily, or you can use more complicated software to be able to do like split screens and content like that. But I'm actually helping with a lodge in my section is doing something tonight, and they're just doing a Zoom call straight to Facebook Live. And that makes it really easy to have like a low tech way of doing it without, like a studio or something crazy like that. But I guess a good way to engage with your members right now is to utilize social media. I know my section created like a bingo post recently that we're trying to put out, and I think lodges do like Kahoots or trivia nights over social media, so fun things like that to kind of keep digitally. But if you're able to continue to engage with your lodge members and keep them interactive in the program, it's going to keep our members engaged and ensure that they're still interacting with our program and values on a daily basis. So I would encourage you to be innovative, look at what other lodges are using. I talked a little bit about some other practices we're seeing, but definitely think about who has access to social media and things like that, to make sure you're including everyone, and make sure that you're making your content entertaining, because it's really hard to get people to engage with content that's not going to be entertaining. So just think about what would be fun for you to do over social media and things like that. And then how can lodge leaders best plan out their content release schedule? Yeah, so if you use a social media management tool, and often this does require a paid account, but you can schedule posts pretty far in advance. I know with a free account on Buffer, you can do up to 2 weeks, but with a paid account, I think it's up to 6 months. So I typically find it helpful to just sit down with your social media team and go ahead and look at all the different things coming up. So when is your conclave going to be, any others, and then any other deadlines. So program registration opens here, closes there, and get all those deadlines on your calendar, and then figure out when you want to post about them, whether that's a week in advance or the day of, and just really make a timeline of what you're going to do at different times. But then also go through and include like holiday messages. So if you want to make a post about the 4th of July this summer, you want to make sure you have that on your content schedule, so you don't miss out on that. And then go ahead and plan a couple themed things. So like we talked about Throwback Thursday. I know a lodge in my section does like good. I know my section uses a Google Calendar and just kind of goes from there into our social media management tool. But you can also just use whatever agenda or planning software you normally do, and just make sure whoever's responsible for that is transferring that over to your social media management tool. And I think the big lesson here as far as scheduling posts is that a social media management tool like Buffer or Hootsuite makes it a lot easier to schedule your content ahead of time. So that's kind of the big lesson there. I think that's all of the questions that I see in the chat right now. If you have any other questions, my email is here on the slide, chief@sr7b.org, or you can also find it in the handout that Tyler's going to send out. But I really appreciate for tuning in today, and I thank Tyler for putting this all together. I think it was a really great event, and I look forward to seeing you all through the rest of the sessions today. Thank you.
My experiences with buffering and everything, our YouTube channel is doing a lot better than Facebook right now, because a lot of people are doing Facebook Lives currently, and so we are using that also, and that is pinned in our comments on Facebook. But our next session is going to be supporting the council, the lodge's role in the council. And so we're about to go into a break really quick, so we can have a quick break for a bathroom, get up and stretch. And then we will go right back into doing Hey everybody, and we're back. I hope you guys had a great break. So now we're going to go on supporting the council, the lodge's role in council support. So I will let Job take it over.
My name is Joe Keith. I am, like Tyler said, I'm the former SR3 section chief for the great state of Texas. Hello, any Texas people watching? And today I will be going over supporting the councils, the lodge role in council support. And whenever we're talking about supporting the councils, right, as you know, the council is an integral part of the Boy Scouts of America, and we as a lodge are also an integral part of the Boy Scouts of America. So as together, we have to work together to fulfill our mission and purpose in the scouting way. And this session, we're going to be diving in real deep on different ways that we can accomplish this idea and this mission in these next couple of slides. And I highly encourage you guys, if y'all have any questions throughout the this presentation, please go on YouTube comments, go on Facebook Live, and just type in your questions, and we'll be happy to answer them as soon as possible. So with that, we're going to go into the role of the lodge. The Order of the Arrow's National Business Plan supports the councils, right? To challenge local lodges to take specific active roles in annual district and council events. And when we're talking about that, we're discussing about, your council-wide campouts, your district banquets, your council banquets, your Silver Beaver banquets, whatever it is, their annual district or council events, being able to take specific roles and help support those activities. Emphasize the involvement of the individual airmen within the unit by creating a larger focus on the several programs and initiatives that impact the unit, whether that being, your unit service award, unit of excellence, helping out in a camp out, things like that. But going back to our roots, being a unit serving organization, being able to emphasize the involvement of those individual airmen. Explore new and innovative means of BSA membership growth and retention in collaboration with councils during lodge's required annual meeting with the Scout Executive. So for me, I used to meet with my Scout Executive about 2 or 3 times a week, and we're able to bounce off ideas on this membership growth. Being able to meet with your Scout Executive and discussing these is a really important part. It's all about that communication, just like how we discussed in Ethan's session. Communication is growing and retaining members, whether it be training ideas, whether it be like the Lingamat programs, whatever pilot initiatives that can captivate and activate those members or those new members to growing and retaining the membership. Develop an actionable relationship between Cub Scouting and the Order of the Arrow. As you know, and a lot of us have stories about whenever we were Cub Scouts, we were, approached by these, people in regalia with these fine, fancy sashes. And that kind of sparked our interest. Well, it's the same now as it was back then. We have to have a good relationship with Cub Scouting and the Order of the Arrow so that we can engage and activate those new members as they're coming up. And then finally, continue to promote the Order of the Arrow in underserved population of scouting community through specific focus on membership diversification. Okay, and what that means is, whenever you have each lodge kind of has, a super small lodge, and we have to be able to grow those programs, grow those chapters, and grow those districts so that those chapters can become a high-performing chapter and also help out the district and so on. Now, the mission of the lodge. The mission of the Order of the Arrow is to fulfill its purpose as an integral part of the Boy Scouts of America. The same as councils, they are an integral part of the Boy Scouts of America. We are also an integral part of the Boy Scouts of America, and together we have to form a team so that we are able to accomplish this mission here. And the mission of the Order of the Arrow is to fulfill its purpose as an integral part of the Boy to work from a council side and a lodge side so that we can come together and fulfill this mission as an integral part of the Boy Scouts of America. So now we're going to have a little brainstorming activity, and what I want for you guys in the comment section, go ahead and answer this question. What are some things an Order of the Arrow chapter or lodge can do to support the council or districts? I'm going to give y'all a couple minutes. Just go in there, go into the comment section. We'll be monitoring it, and throw your ideas out. So I see that we have a couple people hopping on here. That's great. Got a couple ideas going. Awesome. So we're going to go in now to some opportunities of supporting the council. And thank you guys for hopping on there and throwing your comments around. They're much appreciated. So a couple of opportunities that we can do to financially support our councils is through financial support, whether it be like direct support, gifts in kind raisers, or lodge fundraisers. Whenever we talk about like the James E. West, or when we talk about maybe a lodge banquet, usually has like maybe a silent auction that helps support the council, or vice versa. It really doesn't matter. Any kind of council fundraiser or direct support is a good way to help support our councils. It means to help kickstart new programs, new ideas at either the Cub Scouting or at the unit level. Then we have council and district event support. Like we were talking about just a few slides ago, different kinds of council-wide campouts. If y'all guys do that in y'all's council. I know my council has a council-wide campout, and usually the Order of the Arrow puts on, or our lodge puts on, a large brotherhood ceremony and a large call-out ceremony. And we also have a Indian village, or an AIA village, where we go out and we get all new units, and we talk to them about what the Order of the Arrow does and some of the opportunities that the Order of the Arrow has, being AIA or any leadership or service projects that we have. Which, rolling right into it, service projects. So within the Order of the Arrow, we have ordeals, and ordeals is not only a way to activate new members coming in and kind of indulge them in what the Order of the Arrow is about, and having them understand why we are doing what we're doing, but also for the service projects to the councils and supporting the councils. So we're able to go in depth on, or we're able to give back to any council camps, or wherever we're having the ordeal, or wherever the council is having their service projects at. I know for our lodge, we just had a induction at McGimsey, which is our local camp, and we put in a railing and new electrical systems for the new Cub Scouting area, which will be great come summertime whenever the Cub Scouts come back, and we're able to do day camp for our Cub Scouts. And then we're talking about membership. For membership, kind of self-explanatory whenever we get down into it. We're talking, when we have a growth of membership in a lodge, we also see a growth in membership in the council. As you can see, they're both, proportional. What?
Look at the side chest.
Oh, is it not? I'm on the slide right now. Oh, no. Is it frozen now, Tyler? So while we're working on this, we also go, like we're talking about in membership, we're discussing whenever you grow your lodge membership, obviously your council membership grows, and you're able to kind of feed off of each other. Whenever we activate members in the council, they obviously have this growing interest of at certain age, between that 17, 18, 19 years of age. They've kind of done everything that they can in the Order of the Arrow that's possible, or that they have done in the council or in the unit as possible, right? You probably already got your Eagle, you probably joined a venturing crew or Sea Scout ship, whatever it may be. But now they're looking for something else. And the Order of the Arrow is another part that they can, grow in, and they can also do high adventure things as well. And keeping them retained also grows our membership as well. And then they also help out younger scouts to also help them grow. And at the end of the day, we all grow our membership. And then finally, summer camp. The good summer camp, as it varies across all different councils. But I know in our summer camp, the Order of the Arrow plays a super important part, such as camp chief. And what a camp chief is a member of the Order of the Arrow that the lodge chief or the Key 3 has picked out to specifically oversee the Order of the Arrow's portion, right, of summer camp, which a lot of people might not know. The Order of the Arrow serves a big part of summer camp, whether it be in the call-out ceremonies, brotherhood walks, maybe y'all do service projects. I know we, in ATH, we do a lot of service projects whenever we're at summer camp. But the camp chief is a part of that. And we support the summer camps. And whenever we support the summer camps, and we show our members out there what the Order of the Arrow does, it helps us while helping the council as well. We get a good, we're communicating our message without even knowing that we're communicating our message. We're communicating that we are a organization of cheerful service, and we are here supporting the camp. Integrating your lodge into the council, right? And now when we're talking about this, I want y'all to understand, we're talking about an individually, kind of working the lodge into the council, area, right? A lot of councils might be kind of spread apart from the lodge, right? The lodge is kind of its own thing, and the council is its own thing. Well, whenever you do that, it's kind of like, a team, you just kind of split off, and, it's better to have two heads working on a project than one by itself. So some ways that you can integrate your lodge into the council is annual meeting with the scout executives. I used to meet with my scout executive when I was lodge chief, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a month. And what we would do, we would sit down and we would discuss different tactics on how we can accomplish the goals for the year, being either membership, unit retention, ordeals, membership growth, whatever, councils, any type of council support. We would sit down and we'd make a game plan. And the idea is not, being able to make those game plans, but the idea is to have a set, have that communication, knowing what each person is thinking and being able to act upon that, right? If you with them, right? And that will, and at the end, really hurts councils and lodges because that they're not working together. And the idea is we're trying to get lodges and councils to work together and have a strong ties together so that they can work off of each other. Then we have support of unit service. Like I said, the Order of the Arrow is a unit serving organization, and we have to support the units. Without units, we do not have a chapter, and without chapters, we don't have a lodge. And at the end of the day, whenever a lodge is hurting, definitely a council is hurting, just like in ships or in venturing. The council will end up hurting as well. Now, Lodge Leadership Annual Report. a lot of councils usually have executive board meetings, and having that lodge leadership annual report either there or sometimes they do them at maybe a winter banquet, but having that lodge leadership annual report, being able to reflect on what we've done in the past, but also what we're looking for into the future, is a great idea and a great motivator to help retain and help build that relationship within the lodge and into the council, right? Being able to voice, your mission. And this is not only just for lodge chiefs or, lodge advisors and stuff, but this is also kind of, or district chairmen or wherever, being able to, say, hey, what about the order era, and discuss some plans, will definitely help in integrating your lodge into the council. Now become a member of the executive board. There are all kinds of positions on the executive board, or at your council level. But whenever you are discussing that, make sure to talk to your local council representative or whatever, and ask, where would be appropriate for you to help out. Everyone is looking for help during these times, especially, and you can be able to hop in there and share your feedback and be able to work together on a council project, and having that lodge idea, right? Having the lodge kind of like in your forefront, you're kind of throw in, hey, this is what the lodge is doing. Maybe we can work together and we can end up completing this mission together instead of trying to tackle it one-on-one. And then encourage everyone to join the team. See, this is a big part because a lot of times we have, scouts or, leaders that kind of, push people back, and maybe we don't need you. But inviting everyone and being very open to the team is a very important part whenever you're working on, building that lodge and council relationship. Everyone's a part of this team. We're all working towards the same goal, which is the mission of the order, the era, like we discussed in the past presentations. Everyone is in this together, and we're all trying to come together so that we can tackle these tough challenges and, at the end of the day, thrive as an organization. So, marketing the lodge. I know we just went over this with Ethan Seister, and Ethan did a great job. Glad he was able to do that. But whenever we're talking about, rebranding the logo, y'all probably know, Coca-Cola, y'all know Pepsi, y'all know all these different types of, logos and stuff, or these brands, right? And basically a brand is just, pictures, or some kind of visual item that sends a message, right? So rebranding the lodge to go back to the service is something that a lot of lodges are kind of deviating from without even knowing it. And we have to kind of refocus ourselves and rededicate ourselves to make sure that we're hitting those marks so that we're not going off topic. Like we're talking with Ethan, talking about your topic. We have to make sure that we are presenting and we're branding our lodges or branding our lodge message so that we can tackle these challenges. So back to basics, we can integrate. We can use council and lodges like newsletters, lodges websites, or communication booths and displays are all great ways that we can work with councils and work with different types of lodge leaderships to communicate that message. And this message is not only just going to Calhoun's or lodge members, but this is also going to Johnny Airmen or any airmen coming in, or maybe up and coming airmen. This is the ability to market ourselves and be able to say, hey, this is why we're doing this, right? We have to be able to understand why exactly are we here to this new individual to help activate them, because they're all saying, if you don't know why you're doing something, then why are you here? But being able to know, which comes down to our last point on this slide, which is the annual council executive board presentation. A lot of councils have a executive board meeting. I know our council has it maybe twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. But that is a good time to meet with all the executive board members, the president, the commissioner, council commissioner, or the scout executive, their committees, and being able to express your why, right? Express your why as Lodge. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? And how we can help the councils or the Lodge, or the council help the Lodge, or the Lodge help the council, right? Because like we said, tackle this and thrive. So now we have an annual report activity. Now I know we can't really do this activity, and a lot of y'all are in different states and stuff, which I'm happy to see some of y'all guys are tuned in. Hello, everybody. But right now, what I want y'all guys to do is just by yourself, or maybe if you're in a group, make sure you're staying 6 foot apart. 6 foot apart. But write down some select few key items the Lodge accomplished during the year, right? And what the activity is each group is now the key leadership and advisors of the Lodges. It is the beginning of the year and almost time to meet with the council executive board to present the Lodge annual report, okay? And I'll select a few key items the Lodge accomplished during the year, focus on how these items increase support to the council, develops strategies for the Lodge to become a more integral part in the council. And these 3 topics are really, or these 3 questions are really, really good and engaging, and you can really lead off of these whenever you're talking, not only doing a Lodge annual report, but being able, and maybe, Lodge leaders, having these 3 questions, you're able to know your message and know what you want to push whenever it comes a council Lodge relation. So right now, go ahead, take a few minutes, select a few key items the Lodge accomplished during the year, right? And if you want to, go ahead and drop the comment section of either your YouTube or Facebook, whatever. I would be happy to read over them. Take a few minutes and let's figure out some of these ideas. Fine. All right. taking a couple of minutes to go over those. Make sure your local council or your local lodge leadership, because these are important discussion items and important ideas that should not just be kept at home. Make sure you get those out into the right for to help and support. And now, in conclusion, everyone should understand that, right? This is everybody. It's not just a one-man show. We're all together in this. No matter how big or little of a role you play in the lodge, everyone has a key part in enhancing the support and assistance the lodge can provide to the council. Okay, it all starts with you guys watching here. Make sure you go out and don't be, everyone is a part of this. So go out there, make sure that you help out wherever you can, no matter how big of a role you play in, no matter how many nuts you have on your shirt, does not matter. Go out there and help in any way you can, whether it be in your council, whether it be in your district, whether it be in your chapter, or you're at the unit supporting their local activities. That is a great way to help out and help build these bonds. The idea is that we have to all come together to make anything happen. Being or going in separate directions, just like in the model from NYLT or now, whenever you have that forming stage and everyone's going in all different directions, nothing's getting done. But whenever you come together as one group working towards a common goal, then you're able to accomplish any mission that you can. So I hope this session was helpful for you guys. I'm going to kind of let it kind of lags a little bit. I'm going to see if I can see any of your questions. But if not, you can always email me at jobkeith, J-O-B, Keith, K-E-I-T-H, 2000 at gmail.com. Again, that's jobkeith2000 at gmail.com. And I'd be happy to answer any of y'all's questions if I'm not able to get it pulled up here.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions. I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you for the great session. So now we're going to go into a break, and over this break we'll be having a COC. After that, we will have our newly elected officers, and we'll be back at 2:30 Central Time. So I will see everybody then. We're going to cut off the stream shortly, real quick, to let some bandwidth in on our Wi-Fi so we can focus it on for the COC, but we'll be back at 2:30 sharp, hopefully, if the elections do not